Hi everyone, it's Kristen, and today we're going to learn how to mount a TV on the wall. As you can see, we've mounted ours over the mantle, but essentially you can use any wall in your house as long as you have the wall space for it. So since we're doing it above the mantle, we've already done a ton of prep to the space, including completely bumping out the wall. The original fireplace was flush with the wall, and there wasn't really any space for us to run any wires. We also couldn't hide those awful pipes on the top. If you're doing this above a fireplace and you don't have any kind of bump out, you may be limited in your ability to actually hide the wiring. But if you're doing this on any other wall in your house, then you'll just be able to run the wire down the wall on the inside of the wall and then have it pop out right at the bottom. So a couple of things to consider before we get started. One, we've added extra beams which will allow us to drill directly into them for support. Turns out we'll actually only be using one of those beams because we put them in the wrong spot. So one of them will have the beam for support and the other one will be using a toggle bolt. Secondly, all of the electrical and a tube that will run the wiring is already done. You don't need to do any of this. This is just something that we did to make our lives easier in the long run. To get started, you'll need a drill bits, a level, bolts, the mount itself, a socket wrench or a wrench if you have that, pencil, and toggle bolts, but those aren't pictured here. The one item that I didn't show you was a toggle bolt, which you would use when you don't have any beams available to drill your TV mount into. Toggle bolts are used to support heavier items such as a TV or a mirror. Otherwise, you'll eventually end up with a TV ripping through the drywall, which nobody needs. Toggle bolts are available at any hardware store, and what you want to do is put a washer in between the screw and the toggle piece. And then what will happen is as you're drilling through the hole, this piece will collapse as it goes through, and then as soon as it's behind the drywall, it will pop open, which means you can no longer bring the screw back out without completely unscrewing it and losing this piece. But what that is going to do is help distribute the weight rather than it all sitting on one long screw. It's going to distribute the weight between all of the surface area of the toggle, which will allow you to hold a lot more weight than just on the screw itself. We've gone ahead and already screwed the first brackets onto the back of the television. It needs 4 screws, 2 on each side. And that will be what we use to attach the TV to the mount that will be on the wall. So the first thing you want to do is measure where you want the TV to sit on the wall. We did that by quickly adding the wall mount to the TV bracket and held it up against the wall to see where we wanted the TV to hang and also where the bracket would sit. If possible, this is definitely something you want to do with 2 people, especially if it's a larger TV like ours, because one person will need to hold the TV and the other person will need to make the marks. If you're by yourself, then you can use a measuring tape to measure the TV and where the bracket is going to be on the back, and then use that to set your wall mount. We then measured our wall to make sure the TV was going to sit centered on the wall. You can do that by measuring from the wall to the center and then decide where the bracket will sit at its lowest point. Most kits come with a level, but we're going to use a slightly larger level because we have it. Worst case scenario, most phones also have a built-in level that can be used in a pinch. But you want to make sure that this line is level because this will be what determines whether or not the TV is level once it's on the wall. Next, holding the mount up to the lines and making sure it's level, I marked the 6 holes needed in order to set my bolt. 2 on the left, 2 center, and 2 on the right. Now that we have the wall marked for where the mount is going to go, we're going to drill our holes. We have our drill and 2 different kinds of bolts. The larger bolts are for the middle of the mount, and the smaller ones are going to be for the outside. We only have 2 of the smaller ones because we're going to be using them just for the left side. On the right side, we're going to be using those toggle bolts. When you're selecting your bit, you want to align the bit so it's just slightly smaller than the bolt itself. This will allow for a nice tight fit when you're screwing the bolt into the hole. Now we drill our holes. For the last 2 holes, we're going to use the toggle bolts, which will hold up the right side. We're actually going to use 2 different size washers for this side. We really only need the larger washer for this project, but we don't want the head of the screw to slip through the hole. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the smaller washer for added support. This is all just preliminary. We're not going to put anything into the wall just yet, but after it's all prepped, we can go ahead and put the holes into the wall. The way that you determine the bit size for these holes is based on the width of the toggle itself, rather than the screw because the toggle bolt also has to fit through the hole. And now we'll go ahead and drill those holes. since there's no beam there, these went through a lot cleaner and easier than the other holes, just because there's no resistance behind the drywall. We're going to start with the side that has the toggle bolts. If you're mounting entirely with toggle bolts, you're going to start by setting up the whole mount. If you're using all bolts, then it's a little bit less of a big deal. But the reason that we want to start with the toggles is because the wide part of the toggle, the part that kind of looks like a butterfly, won't go through the holes of the mount once it's up against the wall, which means you need to set it up and put them in before the mount is up. Now that we have our washers and toggles on our screws, it's prepped on the bracket and ready to go. We're going to fold the toggle and place it in the hole. And we're going to do that for both the top and the bottom. This is a little tricky, but just keep playing around with it until both of them are lined up, and then just shove them through. And just like we showed earlier, what it's gonna do is it's gonna butterfly out as soon as it gets through the hole. So then it's gonna get stuck behind the drywall. Now we can go ahead and screw this in. And even though you can't see anything happening, what's happening behind the scenes is the screw is continuing to spin, and that butterfly clip is getting closer and closer until it hits the drywall. So it's actually tightening it, so you can see now this is pretty well supported. We're gonna do the other side as well. Okay, let's screw it now. And actually, I'm gonna loosen it a little bit because we want it too tight, and you don't want it to go too tight too early because you want to be able to adjust it for the other holes. So this way now we can line up all of our holes, and we did that to make sure that it's even and level. I'm just kind of tightening these a little bit just to hold this in place a bit. And now we're going to take our socket wrench and go ahead and add the screws. So before we go ahead and tighten the bolt and make sure everything is super secure, we're gonna just check the level, make sure that we're still completely level. You might have to adjust it a little bit, just kind of shimmy it. And then as soon as it is listed as level, then you can go ahead and secure the rest of the bolts, and then you're good to go. Lastly, you secure your TV to the wall. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope that you all found it helpful, and stay tuned for more how-to videos on this channel. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. If there are more home projects that you're interested in learning more about, leave me a message in the comments. Bye guys.